Okay, everyone, we are back for our final session, day 3 of the 2022 Community-Led Summit. I'm so excited for this topic of conversation. I know this is going to be a great presentation. And I want to remind you all to please bring out your bingo boards. This is your last opportunity to win a free meal on us. So grab those boards, listen out for the words. Danielle is going to be dropping plenty of nuggets during this conversation. So without further ado, Danielle, I'm going to turn it over to you for communicating community ROI.
Awesome. Hi, friends. Ooh, I see some faces I know in the chat already. Woo. All right, let's roll here. Come on, Canva, you can do it. Okay. Okay. I don't want to disappoint anyone, but I have a warning up top. Okay. We're going to have very little talk about data for a workshop about communicating community ROI. So I'm upfront about that. I warned you. So I have a few things to say, and then I'll let you know who I am and what we're going to do here. But I would love to know the point of calculating ROI. So I'd love to hear in the chat, if you could wave a magic wand, have all the metrics and graphs you needed to prove ROI, what could that do for you? What do you think that would unlock? Or if you've done that already, let us know what it's unlocked for you. This is my awkward waiting for chat to catch up. Ooh, head count. Yes. Ooh, like your own motivation. That's cool. Awesome. Confidence. I actually love data for a presentation that's going to be about going beyond that. Yeah, headcount's a big one. Money, money, money. Okay, awesome. Makes sense. Cool. I just wanted to keep that in mind, what you all are like wanting to get out of this as I talk through some examples of how I've unlocked headcount and budget. And kind of, proven to myself that this stuff's working. Okay, so quantitative metrics, super important. I'm only going to cover those a little bit. There's a ton of content out there for that, and it's really kind of personal on what you can measure with your own set of tools. So I know many of us would love to be super data focused, but the truth is we kind of we're lacking the tools. I mean, Comscore is awesome. Orbit's awesome. I work for a company called Burb, and we give you some data as well. But still, I feel like we're sort of in these like Neanderthal stages of community platforms. So I'd love to know how you feel right now. On a scale from 1 to 10, do you feel like you have the tools you need to gather and understand community data? So 1 being absolutely no tools or support, and 10 being you feel like you have everything you need to understand community value and ROI. Just want to get a pulse of where we're at. And while you're thinking about that, 6 is a great number, actually. Hi, Mathilde. Oh, that's a baby number, Carminder and Sophia. I'm sorry. All right, so this is a presentation that will help you out. Okay, awesome. So some of you will have access to data. That's great. This is just presentation is going to give you a way that you can show community ROI in other ways, because there's so many teams and people who don't have a ton of data to work with. I love this quote from Simon Sinek. The true value of a leader is measured by the work they inspire others to do. So you often hear leaders, if you think about being inspired by a leader that you've worked for, are they sharing graph after graph after graph? Not really. They're leaning on a metric or two in their presentations, and then the rest of the time, they're connecting and inspiring their audience with ideas and stories. So, and quite honestly, the data points that they do share, you might find them a little skewed if you dug around just a little bit. Some of you might have seen that in your times in this lovely capitalist system. Okay, so with this presentation, I want to remind you that you are a leader already, and you have the skills you need to show how powerful and important community is to your organization. And that's what I'm going to lean into today. So who am I? Why should you care what I have to say? Well, first, honestly, I hope you're really critical of what I have to say, and I hope you don't see me as an expert, but as someone who has their own personal experiences that inform my own ideas and opinions. The context that I'm creating community strategies from and building communities from come from Etsy, Airbnb, Lyft, and working with Patreon. So that may or may not relate to what you do and the context that you are having to work in. So just like a little caveat for that. So I've been building communities since I started at Etsy 15 years ago. I was the 12th employee at Etsy. I did everything from running online events, offline events, an educator program, the Etsy newsletter, Etsy forums, did a ton of this stuff at Etsy for 6 years. And since then, I have been creating and running powerful initiatives like summits, advocacy groups, and projects for, and even like creating a new onboarding flow for new Airbnb hosts through the lens of community. So that's what I've been doing for my career. And right now I am the Chief Community Officer at Burb. I fought for having a title, a Chief Community title, because I think there should be more of those. I know a lot of you all agree with me. So I joined to help get Burb off the ground a little over a year ago. And we're building tools for community managers. So I like to think of it as like a marketing stack that we're giving to community builders. So if you run a community on Slack, Circle, or Discord, drop me a note and I can let you try out our beta for free. Okay, so this is what we're gonna chat about today. Everything I'm gonna tell you today, you already have done instinctually. I really think that we kind of have all the knowledge inside us and we kind of forget, and we just need people to remind us. So I'm going to remind you and give you some examples of how I've used these qualities to prove the power of community to leadership and get more resources for my own teams and programs. Okay, we're all cool with that? You can reach out to me if you're like, but I really want to know about data. I have some docs I could share with you. Okay. Yes, my affirmations. I'm glad you caught that. Not yet. Okay. I actually changed that yesterday. I'm like, these could be affirmations. Okay. So starting with listening and empathy skills, I mean, being a community builder requires you to constantly be listening for and capturing and organizing needs, challenges, motivations, and then responding with empathy. So in many roles I've been set up in a silo, running a team alone with little access to other teams. I had to fight to be in the right spaces so that I could actually show up and listen and react with empathy. So, for example, when I was hired at Airbnb, this is a photo of a team at Airbnb. My entire team and the other teams I had to work with were in San Francisco, and I lived in New York. So for 5 days of the month, I would go to San Francisco. So talk about being isolated and not being connected. So really what I was doing for my first few months at Airbnb was just trying to understand the community, but really spend a lot of time trying to get embedded into other teams and listen to what their motivations were. Kind of a funny story, in one of my early trips, the director who hired me walked past a meeting that I was sitting in, and everyone else in that meeting was in product and engineering. And after he came up to me and laughed and asked me how the heck I got into that meeting. So we are crafty people. We create spaces. We know how spaces are created. So being strategic about what spaces you're in so that you can get into these rooms and listen and note the motivation of other leaders. In these rooms, I look for opportunities where community work can support the work of other teams. I listen for triggering events that show value and that got other teams resources. So you're doing this in your communities, right? Or continually listening for how are people connecting? Like how else can I serve them with programming? And you can do that internally in the same way. And I really had to flip my mindset because often when I would hear other teams getting resources, I was like, that is not fair. I want those resources. And that's where my energy was going. When I flipped it to how did they, let me figure that out. Was it data that actually got them there? And most of the time I found it wasn't data, it was connections, or it was an experience. It was something, or it was an idea. I once sent an email to our founder at 3 a.m. I just had this idea that like he would think that I was up all night thinking about this and I had to send it at 3 a.m. For him to take me seriously, and it worked. And it had no data in it, and I got access to something I really wanted access to because of this like little trick that I had come up with. Okay, I'm going off script here. Let me get back to my points. So you're gonna go and you're gonna listen, and we all know that listening also builds trust. So you're gonna build trust with your internal collaborators, with internal advocates, and with leadership. When I arrived at Lyft, I was one person running a community program for that entire community, for all Lyft drivers. And I didn't realize that I was walking into a role riddled with historical issues. And like, honestly, being side-eyed by everyone at that company on what I was doing there and what I was going to do with this program that had been nothing but a thorn in their side since the year it was rolled out. So my first 60 days, I spent listening to anyone in the community or internally in the team who had something to say, even if it was really hard to hear. And it wasn't easy because leadership and other teams were just from day one pressuring me to deliver a new strategy. So I really just stood up to say, I need to understand what's going on here before I delivered a strategy so that the strategy could actually get buy-in. And I had no data in that strategy, right? I had just everything that I had heard through everyone else. So I did build trust, and I was able to launch a whole new program, which served, which not only had 12 community leaders, which historically was the program was all around 12 community leaders, but I rolled it out to 150 community leaders in 30 different markets. So that was quite an expansion of resources and people's time that I needed on the ground to help me roll this out. So I wouldn't have been able to do that without these listening skills and these empathy skills that we have already. All right, let's move on to the next one. So you've got the info you need, you're starting to connect dots, and now you're going to use those skills that you're extremely good at connection. So not only are community builders awesome at making connections between people, but they can make connections between systems. You are in a bubble. You see how your users are impacted by so many different things going on at your company. So I want to preface this by saying that there are so many ways to show the value of community and that quantitative and qualitative data are important. I just like reiterating that, very important, but I want to tell you how I've kind of got around that because I haven't had the resources, those initial resources to even gather data. And some of you are probably in that position. Okay, so even when you do have data, right, some of these things are easily filed away. People are busy, and I can't even remember a single data point from a team's presentation in the past. But however, I can remember like stories that they've told and things that have ideas and stories that have hit me at the heart level, right? And then they're super memorable. So remember that you have those skills. Yes, so invite your team to connect with your community at every opportunity. And I know there's someone in this room who actually has proved me very wrong. Patreon hired me to consult with them. And they had a lot of stuff going on there. And one thing I said, because of past experiences I've had, I said, you need to get most of your team out of your community space. That space needs to be the community, and they can't, think the team, they can't lean on the team. And somebody in this room proved me very, very wrong. Haley, if you're here. And this is a value of mine to like have one community and continually connect team members with the community in creative ways. Yet as a consultant, I gave this opinion that it was only going to cause problems. But now Haley at Patreon has, I don't know, how many would you say team members are in that community space? Really going deep with other community members and solving problems together. It's so cool to see. Maybe there's 50, maybe 100. I don't know. There's a lot. And there's a lot of support Haley gives to the team to allow that to happen. It's created a ton of trust and a ton of positive sentiment. And I'm just like so inspired by that work. And I can give you some examples of what I've done. And some of this stuff is a little wild, but it might not be relevant. Like at Etsy, we had a big empty loft space. We didn't have a lot of resources, but we had a big empty loft space. And we brought the community in and we gave a section of our space. We got some old sewing machines, we got big tables, we had craft supplies donated, and we let the community come in and use our space to create. We actually did that all day long. Anybody could come in. We were a little chaotic at that time, but what happened was so cool. An engineer would come out and see somebody making something and stop and talk to them. And then they would just start talking about Etsy. And they would have this connection with the community and really go, wow, this is cool. We should value this. So from that like chaotic point, I kind of got this idea that like we are one community and we all need to be continually connecting. Another example here. So I was tasked with creating the strategy for a series of events for Airbnb hosts, 60 events across the community. I had a pretty small budget, and it was like me and a very small community team. How are we going to pull off 60 events? Well, I took this idea of creating one community where we're all connected, and I had also built up this trust and these connections with other people across the company and the teams that I worked with. And I invited them all to help me run and staff these 60 events across the globe. And I even had them talk to their managers and get buy-in that they could use their travel funds to go to these events. So I had free people working at the events. And I'll talk a little bit about how that played out. But these connections really helped me like stretch my resources. I think now I'll tell you one story, but I'll tell you some more. So at this event, so many things happened that I could tell you that like unlocked so many resources for our team. But I asked this data scientist, and my rest of my team is like, I don't know, like he's kind of like he's got a hard edge. I don't know if he should be like talking to the community. But I had a data scientist come. He was like pretty influential internally at Airbnb, and I was like, I want you to teach hosts how search works. Like, you know, all the data behind how search works, and hosts really want to know how they can like optimize their listings to get seen in search. So I want you to teach them how search works. So he was so inspired after the talk, he pulled me aside and he asked me how we can prove with data that these workshops changed user behavior. So that was something the team had been asking for resources to do for over a year. And all of a sudden we had like one of the top data scientists on our side asking what work he could do to help prove that our events made hosts more successful. We had someone from HR there working the event, and they pulled me aside after, and they're like, you know what? Everyone working this event is super happy and really feels connected to each other now and to the community. Can we test our internal employee survey and see if people who attended these community events have a higher rating of how happy they are at work than the ones who didn't? And we could prove that the people who attended the events actually had a higher rating of like how happy they were at work. Definitely unlocked some like crafty resources in the future. My dog is snoring, by the way, if you can hear that. Okay, I'm gonna keep rolling here. You are a great storyteller. We are constantly gathering and telling stories. Use this to your advantage. So at Lyft, I first started sharing reports just like everyone else. Usually when we come into a team, we're like, okay, I need to understand how things work here. How do people share data? How do they get resources? How do they do OKRs? So, you know, at first you're gonna do the same structure everyone else does. And I would get good feedback, but like no support or action. So I really don't care if my work looks professional and in line with everything else. I care about supporting the needs of my community. So it was time to test out some alternatives. So what I started to do was throw away the template that I was told I needed to use, and I would start telling stories in powerful and different ways. So one of my reports might be all around a single Lyft driver, including photos that I asked him to take to show the experience that he was having. And it was like one driver story. The next month I'd create TikTok-like videos with the help of our community leaders on a theme to show the company what I was talking about. Here's my one data point, right? Really simple. but I have access to the user, and the user, and like a leader, I have access to a leader in the community who's like, I'm going to help you create content around this data point, and let's really show people what impact this makes to our lives. And guess what? No other team has that. Maybe customer success and customer support, but you have built trust, so you have that. Let's see. So you can also identify great stories from the community. They're shared right out in front of you. So that's just so valuable and something that you have at your fingertips. Yes, can you hear him? Okay, I'll tell one more story here. So a community team I was on, I was a full-time consultant, and we were at a crossroads. So we were at a smaller org within a bigger org. And the bigger organization community team just got dismantled. So we were like, God, I can't swear here. We were scared. So we didn't have the resources to measure anything or even to do the work we needed to do to keep the team safe in the long run. So we needed to take a big swing. So here's what we did. And thankfully I had a leader who was a great storyteller and, used his connections and trust to do this. We asked for time at the next board meeting. Talk about a big swing. We were the small team in a small org. We're like, can we have 5 minutes at the next board meeting? We were able to bring in 3 users and have them tell their community stories, really powerful examples of how community changed their lives and their businesses. We helped their stories. We helped them craft their stories as well, keep them short, succinct, powerful, emotional. That actually unlocked budget we didn't have. That unlocked, I don't know if I should tell you. I'm not going to tell you how much, but it was really nice, sizable budget that allowed us to run the programs that we needed to run to show that community was pretty successful. No data, 3 stories, 3 real stories. And we wouldn't have had those stories if we weren't embedded in the community. Okay. So as I'm saying, some of us have data, some of us don't. What I love about community folk is that we are crafty as hell. So if you don't have data, you'll make some, right? So I'm going to just share. Well, I'll share. I'm getting close. Oh, no, I still have 20 minutes. I have lots of time, but we will have Q&A. I'll share some examples, and I would love if anyone in the chat has crafted some way to make data because they actually don't have it. One thing I do when I first start in a new role or a new contract is just continually say, we need a sense of community index. We need a sense of community index. We need a community data point that is unique to us, right? Because often we're taking marketing data points, growth data points. We need a piece of data that's unique to us. And that can take a lot of time to get implemented. The first step to do is come up with this index, sense of community index yourself for your own team, and then just keep pushing it. Keep pushing it as a thing. Tell people this is a thing. This is a meaningful thing. We have created a sense of community index. Here's the benchmark of our sense of community at this point. So if you go to senseofcommunity.com, you can get this amazing report that can show you, I think it's 30 or 40 different questions you can ask to create a sense of community index. Okay, so I don't know. Is anyone else dropping in the chat? I'm trying to watch both things, but I would love to know if you have created a data point that if you've crafted something interesting. I'd love to hear it. Another thing that I push often is, hey, I don't have a way to understand sentiment, or I have so many messages in my community that I don't have a way to actually know what the themes are this month. What can you do by hand? And even if it's God, I only have an hour, okay, I'm going to grab 20, 30 messages from my community. I'm going to take a sample and I'm going to say, here was the sentiment last month based on this sample size, and here's the sentiment this month. And I'm going to do that month over month, just the same application month over month to understand something. That's one hack that I like to do. So you can do that with sentiment or or like coming up with themes. That's a good one too. Like I found that this is coming up often, and I know, well, if anyone else has ideas here, I want to hear them. Okay. So in many industries, and probably the ones you happen to be in, of course, we are data obsessed. So much so that numbers and measures stop actually having real world meetings. Like, how many people are in here? Can I see? Naya, how many people are in here today? How many people are watching me? Maybe I don't want to know. Okay, and woo! Okay, now I'm nervous. 140. Oh my God, that's 140 human beings. Human beings. You're up there, you're watching me. You have lives. You're existing in the world. You have drinks next to you. You're thinking about what I'm saying. 140 people. That's incredible. But the way that we use data all the time, it doesn't have any meaning anymore. I know some of you. You're making me feel better. Ooh, thank you, Emily. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, so people are sharing data all the time internally in your companies, and it barely means anything. And what you have the ability to do is unflatten these numbers and show that they're like real human beings, right? So a sentiment number. Okay, great. Whatever. I'm going to walk away from that. Here are 3 quotes from our community members that reflect this sentiment. They're real stories. They're real people. Here are their photos. I know some people in the room who did this recently and got some attention from leadership because they were told real stories. They had an amazing presentation with a ton of graphs that showed amazing growth. But after the fact, the comment that they heard was like, I loved the 2 stories you shared. That was me, Jessica. Sorry, I got distracted. Jessica was at the summits in 2019. That was my project that I was talking about. How cool is that? Okay, and there's good comments in here too. All right. So lastly, those are just like a handful of skills. These are like my personal skills that I lean on to prove a community is valuable and to get headcount, to get funding. So you have even better strengths. You have other strengths that you can use to not only run your communities, but to show the value and impact of community. This chat is giving me life. Okay, so quick exercise, and we could do a Q&A. Here's I did a poll on Twitter, and I was like, hey, what are the skills, the community builder skills that everyone has to have? So I have a little journaling prompt for you. How can you use one of these strengths that you have to show the value and impact of your community work to your teammates and to leadership, or to yourself? Some of you are one-person shows. So I often find just like writing for 2 to 3 minutes can unlock powerful new ideas. So we'll do Q&A. So we'll just give people some time to either post a question or really think on this question of how you can use your strengths to support leadership, understanding, and buy-in. And I'm going to read through the chat too. I'm going to read, I think this will probably be recording, so I'm just going to read some of the comments for the people who are watching the recording. Emily said, we did a very scrappy analysis looking at people that participate in our community versus those who don't. The data wasn't 100% clean, but we figured out a way to share sentiment, product adoption, and other elements that we knew were important to our exec team. Then we paired that with individual community stories of community members to showcase that these numbers represent humans and interactions and connections. After my own heart, that comment. Human beings. Cool. What else am I missing? I thought I saw another one. Okay, I'm going to click over to the Q&A. We have time. We have 15 minutes, so we could do lots of Q&A. Someone anonymous asks, can I please share some solid metrics to measure community? What are you wanting to measure, I guess is my question. Darn, I really should have put it. I started gathering ways people measure community, and there is, I would say, 100 ways to measure community. What's important to your organization? What has got other people resources? What are you trying to understand? God, it's really hard to give you a metric that works for everyone. I love sense of community index. To me, that's really important, and I'm always continually trying to prove that it is important. If you work for a brand that says they value community in the public, you demand that they show you that they value it behind the scenes. And sense of community index is a great way to do that. That's like a real way to understand if people actually are feeling connected. That's what community is. Okay. This is a problem. To gather sentiment, you must run surveys. What if your members are not taking it, or you're only running a small sample size? With data or with surveys, you're getting people who are already engaged. So if you have a research team, it's really helpful to get their buy-in into what you're doing. Make friends with your research team. They'll help you out. But let me tell you, like, no data is perfect. No data is 100% clean. You can do a holdout survey where, like, you're not surveying some people, but you are giving community programming to some of your users. You're not offering it to other users, and then you're seeing the result. But to me, that goes against my values, and it probably goes against your brand or company values to say we love community, we're community led, but we're going to do a holdout survey. We're going to do a holdout process and not offer community to some people. Then you'd have absolutely clean data, but I mean, then you have a bunch of people who are eventually going to find out, or might find out, that they weren't invited to your community programs. So I don't know, weigh what you can do with how it's going to impact your people and how it's going to impact your work. Okay, how did I find the reps from the community to share this story and show the value of community at Lyft? Did you ask for volunteers or find them through one-on-one chats? I found those through, honestly, connections with the teams on the ground. So I went directly into, I went to like 10 different Lyft offices. They have Lyft, smaller Lyft offices in different cities. And the people who worked there and who worked with drivers knew exactly who I should be talking to. So as soon as I got in contact with them, there's always someone who knows the most passionate user. It's either customer service, customer success, people on the ground. That's how I found them. And then call outs through newsletters and things like that, which is all about connections, right? I got to be connected to the marketing team and build trust with them so they can actually include me in one of their upcoming newsletter campaigns and put my application to become a community leader into the newsletter. And then there's like a bunch of different ways you can understand if someone should be a leader. I think one-on-one conversations, face-to-face, are the best. You can really understand someone's motivation that way. Okay, I think, we have new questions. I'm going to just check chat. I actually have an article. Can I drop it in chat? I have an article about the survey I use for sense of community. I'm just going to head over to my blog really quick and grab that article. But I would suggest looking at the senseofcommunity.com. I think you can download their full set of questions that they asked, and look at the questions and see which ones really apply to your community. But I'm going to share with you the survey that I use. Oh, great question. Okay. Is it worth surveying for sense of community with customers who are not active in the community? Okay, this is so cool. I'm going to tell you a little story. When I worked at BarkBox, which I left out, but I worked there. Does anyone get a BarkBox for their dog? when I worked there, I ran customer service, which actually was really interesting because all the data that I wanted in community and I didn't have, I built a customer service team and I had all these amazing tools that helped me measure conversation. And it was like a kid in a candy store. It was very exciting. I did a lot with that data. But while I was there running customer service, we put a chatbot up, customer service chatbot up on the website. And we were like, this is so funny. People barely use the chatbot, but it's there. So sometimes we'd have to take it down because we actually weren't online. And our marketing team, I don't know how they found this out, but they realized that every time we had chat up, we had more sales. And when we took chat down, we had less sales. Even though people weren't really reaching out to us through chat, we had more sales when chat was on because people had a little bit of trust and faith that there were real human beings there. And I see the same thing happen in community, that even though I'm not participating in community, I know community exists. I hear the stories. I feel like I could be part of it if I wanted to. So I might even put a really, really great responses to a census of community index, even if I'm not participating in the programming. And some of you might see that with lurkers, right? Like I'm there, I'm going to be active when I have time or when I really need to. But yeah, I think lurkers and people who aren't engaged are super valuable and might even feel a strong sense of community, even if they don't participate. Thanks for that question. I'm a little sniffly. I'm very sorry about that. Okay, is there more questions? We have 5 minutes. Also, if anyone wants to drop their community building strength into chat, I'd love to see if there's anything you came up with that's not on this list. Or any ideas that you came up with that you might want to test and want to throw into chat. Oh, I can answer all the questions. Wait, there's one from Margot here. Sense of community. Do you do it at a certain interval? Send it out how? Okay. Best practices for sense of community index. You'll want to do it for a long time, right? Because you're going to want to understand what the baseline is. Do it for as long as you can. Do it at the same, within the same time frames. It's great if you can do it for a year because, a lot of times it's seasonal. People drop off in the summer and they come back in the fall. So the more consistently you can do this, the better. You don't have to survey the same people every time because that can be exhausting. You might just survey 20% of your community and rotate that. So maybe if you did it monthly, you would just do this 20% group. Month A, month B, you'd pick another 20%. Anyone else have survey thoughts for Margot? Make friends with a researcher. I learned so much from researchers about surveying. Oh, Olark. I think that's what we used is Olark. That's funny. Haley, I think what you missed was I was talking about you when you're gone. So Haley says, one of the things I like about non-community staff members showing up in our online space, showing up as online in an online space, their presence, even as a lurker in the online list, creates a sense that they are there. Yeah, that's awesome. Haley, I told them how you schooled me because I was like kind of against having so many team members in a community space, but you're like, no, they need to be there. And you were right. All right, so I have 5 minutes, but I don't see any more questions. I'm sorry that I probably talked too fast. I put my email here in case anyone wants to try Burb. I will set you up. Teacher Naya, can we end early and give everyone 5 minutes to hydrate and maybe go outside?
Yes, I am definitely on board for that. Thank you so much, Danielle, for this very empowering and affirming way to end the summit. I greatly appreciated everything that you shared, again, as I'm sure attendees have too. So everyone, that is a wrap on our sessions and presentations for the 2022 Community-Led Summit. Can we just get some emojis going in the chat? Can I just feel this energy one last time before we all go our separate ways? It has been beautiful sharing this time and this virtual space with each and every one of you. I have learned so much, not even just from our speakers, but from all of you as well. If you won bingo, if I saw it on social media, I've already sent your cards out. Looking at you, Karina and Sophia. If you have not received a card from me, feel free to DM me. Feel free to follow up on Twitter. We will make sure that we get you your gift cards because I really am still trying to have my Oprah moment. 2 is not enough. So the more gift cards I can give out, the better. But thank you to everyone. Please join us for the after party happening in about 10 minutes. You can pop into one of the regional breakout rooms for the final time, pop into one of those sessions, meet some local community managers. We might be planning some in-person meetups based on where we see y'all headed in the sessions tab. So definitely check those out before you leave. You can also open our turntable link to join our party, even DJ with us on stage. So please join for the after party. Replays will be available for up to a year after today in the Hopin platform, but we'll also be uploading them to YouTube shortly. So thank you again to everyone for being here. We'll be here around in the chat for another hour or so if you need anything. But otherwise, I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to see you this time next year. Thanks, everyone.